Imagine a world where the internet is a small, quiet neighborhood. It's the late 1980s, and this digital space is mostly home to academics, researchers, and government scientists. Everyone knows each other, or at least knows of each other. The doors are unlocked, the windows are open, and trust is the unspoken rule. Security? It was barely a thought. The internet wasn't built for defense. It was built for sharing. In this open, collaborative world, no one imagined someone would intentionally try to break it. But that trust, that idyllic digital innocence, was about to be shattered. What happens when the first real cyber attack strikes a world that isn't even aware it's vulnerable? The answer would change the internet forever. It all started not with a malicious plan, but with academic curiosity. Meet Robert Tappan Morris, a brilliant graduate student at Cornell University. He wasn't a criminal mastermind. He was an explorer, fascinated by the architecture of this new digital frontier. He wanted to understand its weaknesses, to map its hidden pathways. So he created a program, a worm, designed to gently travel across the network, counting how many machines were connected. It was supposed to be a harmless experiment, a digital census taker. But in the code, there was a tiny critical flaw. Morris had programmed the worm to be cautious, to check if a computer was already infected before copying itself. But he worried that system administrators might create fake signals to trick his worm. So he added a feature. Even if a machine said it was infected, the worm had a 1 in 7 chance of reinfecting it anyway, just to be sure. It was a small decision, a single line of code, but it would turn his quiet experiment into an uncontrollable digital monster. On the evening of November 2nd, 1988, Morris released his creation from a computer at MIT, hoping to cover his tracks. At first, nothing seemed to happen, but then the reports started trickling in, first from a lab at Berkeley, then from MIT, then from Purdue. Computers were slowing down to a crawl. They were becoming unresponsive, clogged with endless copies of the same mysterious program. The worm wasn't just spreading, it was multiplying uncontrollably on each machine it touched. That 1 in 7 chance of reinfection was far too aggressive. Instead of a gentle census, it was a brutal, self-replicating plague. Panic set in. System administrators at universities and research labs across the country made a drastic decision. They unplugged. To save their own systems, they severed their connections to the internet, effectively dismantling the network piece by piece. Within hours, the worm had infected an estimated 6,000 computers. That might not sound like much today, but in 1988, that was roughly 10% of the entire internet. The quiet, trusting neighborhood had been plunged into chaos. The night the internet broke had begun. As the digital dust settled, the big question wasn't just how, but why. Was Robert Tappan Morris a malicious hacker bent on destruction? Or was he just a curious researcher whose experiment went horribly wrong? Morris himself was in a panic. He realized his mistake almost immediately and asked a friend at Harvard to post an anonymous message online with instructions on how to kill the worm. But by then, it was too late. The internet was so congested that the message couldn't get through. His intentions were arguably academic, but the consequences were devastating, causing millions of dollars in damages from downtime and cleanup. This led to a landmark legal case. Morris became the very first person to be tried and convicted under the new Computer Fraud and Abuse Act of 1986. The court had to grapple with a new kind of crime, one without physical presence or traditional malice. Was he a criminal who deserved punishment, or was he a poignant warning sign of the dangers lurking in our increasingly connected world? The verdict set a precedent that resonates in every cybercrime case to this day. The Morris worm was more than just a crisis. It was a wake-up call. The incident proved that the internet's foundation of trust was no longer enough. In response, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, or DARPA, funded the creation of the CERT Coordination Center at Carnegie Mellon University. This was the world's first ever cybersecurity emergency response team, a digital fire department for the internet. System administrators everywhere began to take security seriously, developing patches, strengthening passwords, and building digital walls. A new culture of caution and defense was born. The worm marked the end of the internet's childhood and the beginning of the modern cybersecurity era we live in today. Every time you update your software, use a firewall, or hear about a new cyber threat, you're seeing the legacy of that one night in 1988. The internet was never the same after a few hundred lines of code ran wild, and in a way, we have a rogue student experiment to thank for the safer, more resilient digital world we navigate today. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more dives into the history that shaped our digital world. See you in the next one.